Hello, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the Critical Materials Innovation Hub webinar series. It's a series that we've put on and it's designed by CMI and for CMI. I'm Cynthia Howell, and I'm going to be your moderator today. I'd like to tell you a little bit about the webinar. These webinars are hosted by Colorado School of Mines and broadcast from all over, today's international and national. We always want to serve you with these webinars, so if you have a topic that you'd like to hear about, please don't hesitate to give us that information or recommend somebody to do a webinar for us. That can be on the survey or email at cmi@mines.edu. This is a public webinar, and a recording is going to be available a week at aimslab.gov/CMI. And it's under the workforce menu. We also have a YouTube, and it's a Critical Materials Innovation Hub channel. So please subscribe to get updates about new recordings as well. Questions, we're going to hold those to the end for the presenter, but they can be typed in at any time in the Q&A box. And I want to encourage you to do that so that there are some questions queued up when we finish the presentation. And then that way they can be answered following the presentation. I'd like to introduce our presenter. So today our presenter is Tae-Yoon Kim, and he is a senior energy analyst at the International Energy Agency, sorry about that. And he's working in the office of the Chief Energy Economist. He leads IEA's analysis and modeling on critical minerals. He's been a lead author in special reports for IEA and critical minerals in clean energy transition, and is also a major contributor for the flagship publication World Energy Outlook and World Energy Investment. Before he came to IEA, he worked as a senior manager at Accenture's energy strategy practice and as an infrastructure finance specialist at the World Bank. And I don't want to take any more time from our presenter. Tae-Yoon, if you don't mind taking it over from here.
Thank you, Cynthia. It's a great pleasure to be here to introduce some of the key findings of our latest report on critical minerals. So, as some of you may know, the IEA has been publishing the market report for many energy topics, such as oil, natural gas, and renewables. And now critical minerals is one of the regular feature in this publication portfolio. So we published some major report in 2021 and the market review report in 2023. And then just last month in May, we released this year's edition, Global Critical Minerals Outlook 2024, which contains full update of the demand and supply outlook for key energy transition minerals, including some of the topical analysis. And also down at the bottom of the slide, there are two available tools that complement this IEA's analysis. One is the Critical Minerals Data Explorer, which allows users to access the projection data in a free and online tool. So we make all our projection data, demand projection under different scenarios, make it available through this online tool, so you can navigate in whichever way you want. And also we maintain the critical minerals policy tracker, where we track around 35 countries to build some central database about all kinds of policy measures implemented in different regions and different countries. So these two, it could be valuable tool for your exercise and your analysis and further. So then going into the main part of the presentation, the critical minerals market in 2023 remained quite turbulent. And the main story here is about falling prices. So after sharp increases in 2021 and 2022, by and large, we are now back around the level seen the pre-pandemic. The battery metals saw a particularly steep declines, with some lithium spot prices plummeting by 75% and prices for graphite, cobalt, nickel all dropping by 30 to 45%. And it is interesting to think about the reasons for these price declines. In our view, it is not because demand faltered, because demand growth for lithium increased by 30% over the past 2 years, and demand growth for nickel, cobalt, graphite, rare earth element all registered some 8 to 10% annual growth, which is quite lowest number. But supply growth has been even stronger, with increases from Indonesia, China, and Africa in other regions, which is one of the main factors that underpinned the price declines. And there's also impact of the inventory overhang in the downstream the battery supply chains, cathode and cells, which also weighed on the demand side. And then also there is an impact of the correction of the overly steep price increases in 2021 and 2022. So all these combined the play a role in these price declines. But this recent price fall affected some of the investment appetite, but in new mineral supply. But still, we think in our estimation, investment in non-ferrous metal production mining remained relatively healthy. So with some 10% increase in investment in 2023. So it is smaller than the 30% increase in 2022, but still the investment is growing quite robustly. And also the lithium investment, despite some weak price environment, we estimate it grew by 60% in 2023. It's quite impressive numbers. And likewise, the exploration spending also registered some robust increase of 15% in 2023, led by Canada, Latin America, and Australia. And when we think about the implications of the price declines, there are two sides of impact. On the one hand, it's good news for consumers. It makes the clean energy equipment more affordable and the more affordable. So the chart you are seeing here is about the IEA's clean energy equipment price index, which is the basket price of the solar panel, wind turbines, batteries, and electrolyzers. And as you can see from the chart, until 2020, this price index just kept declining. But in 2021 and in 2022, second year in a row, the trend has been reversed. So the cost increased by some certain percentage in these 2 years. Now with falling prices, the falling material prices, the price index is now down, downward trajectory with 8% decline, and we estimate the battery pack cost declined by 14% in this year. So this shows this price fall have some good impact on making the clean energy more affordable and ensuring some speedy, rapid transitions. But on the other hand, this is dampening appetite for investment. So for example, in the case of nickel mine, and we identify some 30 projects that are facing some sort of risks in today's low price environment. But what struggles is about almost 3/4 of this project at risk are located outside of today's top 3 producers. So some of the projects that contribute to more diversified, resilient supply going forward. So it's vain for the future mineral investment and the diversifications. And another context before diving into the critical mineral topics, there's a lot of debate about the pace of clean energy deployment. But in our view, the momentum for clean energy deployment is quite remain robust. As you can see from the chart, in solar PV registered some 85% growth in 2023, and wind suffered a little bit in 2022 due to supply chain bottleneck, but they resumed growth by 60% in 2023. Electric cars in 2023, the sales growth was 35%, and we just completed the Q1 estimation for 2024, and the same number was 25%. So 25 to 35% sales growth is smaller than the 60% growth we saw in 2022, but still, we think there's quite robust number, and there's some big momentum for further growth in developing economies and also China and other markets. And battery storage is surprising the market watchers in many ways. In 2022, the deployment of energy storage doubled and also registered another doubling in 2023. So all this underpins some further growth in mineral demand to serve this deployment. So in our net zero scenario, the demand for these critical minerals in the clean tech sector is set to quadruple by 2040 over the next 2 decades. And lithium demand really standing out with some 9-fold growth, and it's mainly driven by this strong role in batteries. And graphite is another material that's showing very the fast pace of growth with 4-fold growth due to its very important role in anode chemistries. And likewise, demand for nickel, cobalt, rare earth element all doubles over the next 2 decades. And copper demand increases by 50%, but this is the material that registers some largest absolute volume growth among the 6 materials we are tracking. Then next question is about what about supply? So here in the chart, we are showing total demand split into two parts. One, the upper part, the right yellow part is the portion we estimate that can be met by secondary supply through recycling and reuse. And this solid yellow area is what we call the primary supply requirement, which is the portion that needs to be met by mines and smelters and refiners. And in the latest report, and we built two supply scenarios, base case and high production case, based on detailed assessment of individual project, the announced project for mining and refining. And by comparing the supply scenarios and this primary supply requirement, and then one can understand how the future supply demand balance may look like and how the level of the production concentration might evolve in the future. So as a result, using our announced project scenario and as a benchmark, the situation in 2035 broadly falls into three major categories. The first category is for copper, lithium. The expected mine supply from announced project falls short of the material requirement in this scenario. And the second group is the nickel and cobalt. Things looks relatively tight relative to confirmed project, but if we include more prospective project such as in our high production case, things looks much better. That means a lot of some projects are sitting in the early stage and less certain the categories. And the third group is graphite and rare earth element. These materials may not face the volume supply risks, but these are the materials that having the high level of geographical concentration of production, so which is the risk factors we need to take into account. So when we show the gap between demand and supply, such as copper and lithium, these results are not set in stone. So this gap can be potentially closed by the increasing investment in new supply or promoting the recycling beyond what we have assumed, and also introducing some further the material efficiency measures. There are some ways to close these gaps, but the aim of this exercise analysis is to show, based on today's announced project, based on today's the market status and where we are heading in terms of the future demand and supply balances. So to underpin where the more effort industries and policymakers effort are needed to close these gaps. And overall situation between demand and supply looks better than in our 2021 report, but there's still more ways to go to ensure some reliable supplies. But there has been some progress in increasing absolute supply of minerals, but the same cannot be said for diversification. We all know the production of the critical minerals is heavily concentrated in few number of countries. Then question is, what about the future? So we try to analyze and how the concentration picture may evolve in the future. But the conclusion is this level of concentration is set to remain quite high, especially for refined materials. This is because the almost 75% of the supply growth for these refined minerals between today and 2030 comes from today's top 3 producers. And as you can see from the chart, in many cases, top single the producer account for a large portion of the supply growth in this decade. Indonesia for nickel and China for others. So this means the diversification remain one of the important agenda for policymakers and industry to ensure more secure and resilient supplies. And one interesting way to look at this diversification is through the N-1 resilience analysis. In the energy market, such as natural gas market, we often conduct analysis assuming some hypothetical disruption case. So what if the largest supplier is taken offline from the market, and what is the impact on the market? So we applied this concept to the critical mineral context, the excluding largest supplier from both demand and supply, and look at how supply demand balances look like in this picture. And then this analysis revealed quite interesting picture. In the case of copper, China is the largest supplier of refined copper, but China is also the largest consumer of the copper. So when you exclude both demand and supply, the total demand and supply balance does not change much. But the picture is very different for nickel and graphite. Nickel, when you exclude largest supply from the market and available this N-1 supplies is very much reduced. So as some of you know, in the EU Critical Raw Material Act, this act targets to limit the share of single suppliers to below 65%. That means at least 35% should come from the non-dominating producers. So if you apply this 35, the single origin threshold, the available N- supply for nickel and just on the edge of meeting this threshold. And situation is much more stark for graphite. Graphite, the available supply outside of today's dominant players, very much the minimal in this picture. So whereas graphite, I mentioned about the overall global supply demand balance may look okay, but if you look at the available supply outside of today's dominant players, and things looks very different. So leaving very little scope for complacency in terms of security of supply. This is another way to look at the impact of the high level of the concentration of production. And as demand grows for these critical minerals, the market value and market size of these critical minerals also grows quite rapidly in our projections. So in the net zero scenario, the market value of the 6 key transition minerals almost doubles, reaching some 800 billion by 2040. And who captures this benefit, this growing market value? For mining, the value is more diversified and more dispersed across different regions. Latin America, Indonesia, and Africa, increase their market value of their mine production quite rapidly in our base case. Latin America for copper and lithium, Indonesia is nickel story, and Africa for lithium and cobalt and copper. But on the refining in China, they account for around 40% of today's market value among the 6 materials, but they increased the share in refined market value to 50%. So it is mainly about the China story in this decade for refining operations, with some increases from Indonesia for nickel. And one of the new feature in this year's Outlook report is about mineral-specific, the clean energy transition risk assessment. So we defined some 4 categories: supply risks, geopolitical risks, and various to respond to supply disruption and exposure to ESG and climate risks. And we adopted some 20 quantitative and qualitative indicators to assess the risk levels for 6 key focus minerals. And the result is quite interesting. So lithium and copper are more exposed to supply volume risks, whereas graphite, nickel, and cobalt, rare earths, and all face quite substantial geopolitical risks. And as you can see from the right side, all 6 materials face some high level of the ESG exposure to ESG and climate risks, which means most of today's operations is happening in the regions with either low governance score or high environmental risks. Overall, in aggregate, the lithium and graphite and tops in terms of risk scores, followed by rare earth element and nickel and cobalt. And when we think about the ways to close the gap between demand and supply, people often focus on supply side measures, investment in new mines and new refineries and new smelters. This is absolutely crucial. But we think there are some ample scope for demand side actions to play a role through recycling and technology innovation, and also the behavioral changes such as right sizing of batteries. In recycling specifically, when you look at the share of recycled materials in total supply, the share has remained more or less stable without much change in the past. But in our net zero scenario, we think this will have to change. And we think this can change with the growing policy attention on recycling, but also the rise of the battery recycling in the whole picture. So what does it mean for the mineral investment? So to achieve net zero goals, we estimate some 800 billion of investment needed to new mines and so in the mining operations over the next 2 decades. But without the uptake of recycling you see from the left side, the investment requirement would have been a third higher, which highlight the importance of the scaling of recycling to make the transition and more affordable and reduce the financial burden to deliver all these minerals and materials. And in addition to recycling, another aspect we can think about the behavioral changes, and battery size is one of the key prominent examples. In the conventional petroleum cars, we saw the people preferred some large size vehicles such as SUVs. And we are seeing that trend is being replicated in the EV sector. So we track the average battery size for passenger EVs, and across all regions from global, China, US, and Europe, the average size of batteries has kept increasing until today. And this adds a lot of pressure for the future, the material requirement in our projections. So if somehow the policymakers and consumers can tame this trend and keep the battery size growth relatively minimal, and this can yield a lot of reduction in material demand. And this is one of the key measures that can reduce the potential supply strains in the future. Finally, we all talk about some new investment and new production, new supply, but these new supply should not come at the expense of environment and local communities. And one first essential step is to undertake the robust, systematic, the ESG performance monitoring to understand where the industry is making some progress in the various ESG segments and where the progress is relatively lacking. So for that, we compiled performance of the 25 major mining companies that have some good presence in the energy transition mineral space. And the outcome, the result is quite mixed. There are some areas that industry is making some progress, some showing some positive trend, such as renewable energy use and community investment and gender balance and worker safety. But the same cannot be said for some environmental indicators such as waste generation and water consumption and greenhouse gas emissions. And it is not to say the industry is not making progress, but they are making progress to reduce their emissions and reduce water use and waste. But this analysis highlights there's some ample scope to further the step up, strengthen this effort to improve the performance. And one of the reasons for this declining the performance for environmental indicators is about the place to develop these new materials become more challenging with some the declining ore grade, ore quality. But there are some many companies showing some best practices and best examples to overcome these barriers. So this analysis is highlighting there are some more scope to improve the ESG performance, and we aim to keep expanding this analysis in the next cycle, adding more countries and more companies to the portfolio to understand the ESG picture of the industry. So with that, I will stop here and conclude my presentation. So thank you for attention, and then very happy to have any questions you have. Thank you.
Tae-Yoon, I want to thank you for a great presentation. I think that it has brought light to the struggle of demand and supply for all of our critical minerals. And I know there are going to be some great questions. We have 2 queued up right now, if you want to start answering questions.
Yep, happy to. So resilience analysis for lithium. So maybe this is question about I show this N-1 supply for copper, nickel, and graphite in one of the slides. So I think this question is asking what is the picture for lithium. So you in the report, and you can find this N-1 resilience assessment for all 6 materials. And lithium is relatively diversified in terms of supply. So and also China is the major supplier, but also major consumer of lithium. So it is more close to the picture of copper than the picture for nickel and graphite. So the lithium is the material that facing some large supply demand balances. So although today's the market is relatively well supplied, but we think as we step up the deployment of EVs, and still there's some big potential for further demand growth for lithium, and then so there is some substantially to keep up the supply growth and investment for lithium. But that supply that highlights the supply risk. But in terms of the diversification and in terms of resilience assessment, and situation is slightly better than other materials such as nickel and graphite. And the second question is about, does the recycling of nickel include nickel and stainless steel? So yes, so for these 6 materials, and the project demand for not just for clean tech sector, but also non-energy sector such as steel, construction, and building and others. So for recycling as well, we include not just of the recycling from end of life product, but also the recycled volumes from other consuming segments such as construction and building and others based on their lifetime and collection rate and yield losses. So this includes all consuming sectors of nickel. And third question is the 2 tools from the IEA you mentioned earlier. So yes, definitely. So maybe I can guide the address. So this is the IEA's topic page for critical minerals, and this is the page you can find all the analysis and report, but also the tools, data explorer, and also the policy checker. So I invite you to visit this website and then check all available tools on the IEA website. And another question is, does the price trend relate with the start on the stabilization of COVID rather than just demand and supply? Yes, something about what underpins some big volatility in price trend, that's the post-pandemic. So in the post-pandemic in 2021 and 2022, yeah, it's a combination of the post-COVID impact, but also demand also has remained quite strong in these 2 years. So that means the supply was struggling to keep up with demand in these 2 years. So one of the reasons that underpinned the price increases, but also scale of price increase in these 2 years has been a bit stronger than what market fundamentals suggest. So there has been some fundamental drivers that underpinning price increases in the 2021 too, but the level of price increase we saw is a bit higher than what the market fundamental supply demand balance suggests. So that we think there are the expectation for future the supply demand imbalances and also some traders, the speculative activities. So, and the decline we saw in 2023 is the combination of the more balanced picture for demand supply, but also the collection of the overly steep the price increases we saw in 2021 and 2. Thank you. And another question is, in the resilience analysis, is co-production factored in for the metals that are co-produced with base metals? Yes. So in our 6 key focus minerals, and mainly cobalt is the one that is produced as a byproduct of this either nickel and copper mines. So when we track the cobalt supply, and we also include both the primary cobalt supply, but also the byproduct production from the nickel and copper mines. So the co-production is factored into the analysis, but there are some other the co-produced materials such as some smaller minerals, and which was not the focus of this analysis. So maybe because we, as an energy agency, we focus mainly on the key energy transition minerals such as copper, lithium, nickel, and cobalt, and graphite, and rare earth element. But in the future, we aim to add some more minerals and more materials in the portfolio of analysis. So one very near in the next in line is the high purity manganese and also phosphate for lithium ion phosphate chemistry. So we think the importance of these 2 minerals is increasing in the energy transition picture. So we aim to expand our analysis further into those 2 key minerals in the next edition. Thank you.
We have time for
I see no further questions.
Yes, I think we have time for another question if anybody would like to chime in. I again really appreciated in your presentation the focus on really reducing material demand. Again, interesting concept of resizing of batteries or right sizing of batteries, and then also the consideration for impact on the communities. Do you have any other comments on research that you found on impact on communities?
So, yep, the mining's impact on local communities, and also this is very important aspect to make mining operations getting some social license to operate. So we are looking at these issues very closely, and just want to highlight this report we released in December last year. So I will just turn to the right page for that one. So in between our market report and December 2023, we released some document called Sustainable and Responsible Critical Mineral Supply Chains, where we laid out some of the recommendations to ensure some responsible and sustainable supply of minerals. And the focus on some several key ESG dimensions, including the usual suspects as emissions and water use, but also included community investment and the biodiversity and etc. So this is a good materials to look at to our view on the social and local community aspect. But also our colleagues in the OECD also work a lot on the local community impact. So also you may also consult some of the OECD publication on this topic. But our effort is mainly focusing on tracking the quantitative performance. So for the local impact, and we use the community investment as an indicator to understand the industry's progress. So then we compiled the all available information from 25 companies and by time series to understand where there are some improving trend or declining trend. So and the community investment, and this one of the area that showing some improvement in the performance, although not fully satisfactory, but this is an area that the industry is making some good progress in recent years. And I think I see there are some additional question about, could you comment about your data collection method for the analysis? Yes, just briefly explain the methodology to conduct these projections. So we at the IEA, we maintain our long-term energy model. So for EVs and solar panels, wind turbines, and every year as part of the World Energy Outlook publication, we update the projections for the future energy technology deployment, based on in-house the modeling framework. So and then for mineral demand projections, and they had to assume some more granular assumptions about the technology shares, and also the composition of different types of turbines, for example, and also different battery chemistries and others. So this is based on our expert judgment, based on discussion with the industry stakeholders to develop some base case assumptions for this one. And then you can, by multiplying the material intensity, you can reasonably project the future mineral requirement. And then for recycling, we assume the lifetime of the consuming segment, and then develop some assumptions for collection rate and yield losses, and to estimate the recycled volumes in different scenarios. And then there's some primary supply requirement. And for supply scenarios, and we relied on some of the professional data sources, such as the public or private. So sometimes USGS and also S&P, the market intelligence, and the benchmark energy mineral intelligence. So there are some the different public and commercial sources to review the individual project, and then build some scenarios for the future supply. So combining this demand projection in-house and the supply scenarios, and we try to understand where the future demand and supply market dynamics would evolve, and how the level of concentration evolve over time. So that is the main the source of information, and how we conduct our projection and analysis.
Thank you again for a great presentation, and that we do not have any additional questions. I do want to remind our audience, first of all, thank you for attending. We've had a great crowd today. The recording is going to be available next week at aimslab.gov/CMI, and also on our Critical Materials Innovation Hub YouTube channel. Details for the next webinar will always be in the Critical Times newsletter, so stay tuned. The website is above and on Ames National Lab's social media. If you have a suggestion, again, I want to prompt that you please let us know about a webinar topic or a presenter that you might like to have. Please share it on the exit survey or email us at cmi@mines.edu. Thank you all again, and we'll look forward to seeing you probably in August.